and salam. Welcome to The Muslim Viewpoint, a new podcast series powered by American Muslim Today, a groundbreaking nonprofit digital newspaper which champions civic engagement. AMT informs and empowers the diverse voices of almost 30 million Muslims here in the U.S. and other Western countries. I'm your producer and host, Maya Gaylor, and today we have an interview with Lanisa Kitchener, the head of the African and Middle Eastern Division at the Library of Congress, about their recent $2.5 million grant from the Lilly Endowment to expand their exhibit that features Islamic culture and figures. Ms. Kitchener explains why it is important to provide the public with an opportunity to learn about diverse history.
The Library of Congress is invested in the human story across time and space. And as we know, when we're talking about Africa, when we are talking about the Middle East, this is the birthplace of humanity. It is the origin of human civilization as we know it. It is the origin of Abrahamic faiths as we know them. And religion has in particular been such a critical motivator for human behavior. For many, it helps to provide a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of connection, a sense of community. For many, it is not only a way of life, it is the purpose of life. So in our effort to better understand the human story, we have endeavored to look even more critically at world religions and their impact on the societies represented in the African and Middle Eastern Division of the library.
And then, so the exhibit features, as you mentioned, the Abrahamic religions. So why is it crucial for, now our culture as a society, especially in America, we're very Christian-based, culture. So why is it important to recognize the history of these, very similar religions in order to come to a common understanding today?
I think it has always been critical to understand what connects us across time, space, culture. We're in a moment now where there's opportunity through digital technology, through online formats to connect even more quickly with each other in real time to sort of better understand our unique positions, our ways of entering, the worlds and the spaces that we occupy. And so, really the funds that we received from the Lilly Endowment help us to do some of that connective work, that connecting work that is so critical to understanding what unites us, but also what makes us distinct. I see this as a very extraordinary, exciting time to delve deeper again into the human story.
Yeah, and so how do you hope that people will literally interact with this exhibit?
Yeah, it's important to note that the activity is it includes a series of outputs. We have already launched an online exhibition, a story map demonstrating prayer traditions throughout Africa and the Middle East that has been extraordinarily successful in terms of its reach, impact, and influence. We've received commentary that it is comprehensive, it is informative, and when where there was confusion about perhaps the connection between Armenian prayer traditions and, West African prayer traditions through this particular story map, viewers and colleagues who have engaged the material now have a way to again bridge what may have once been perceived as something of a divide. So off the cusp, just based upon what we've already done, the idea is for, viewers and participants to our programmatic outputs to see themselves reflected in the collections of the library, to have the subject matter expertise of the library expanded by input from the communities that are represented in our collections. We know a lot, but we don't know it all. And so to have that kind of engagement and that dialogue is critical to us. We also feel a very strong responsibility within the division to share in the meaning making process. We collect foreign language materials so that if you don't speak Armenian, if you are not versed in Amharic, if you don't speak Arabic, perhaps there is an inability to access the material. But through these programs, we hope to translate the beauty, the richness, the diversity of the religious cultures represented in our collection so that everybody everywhere can understand them in one way or another.
Right. I guess, can you tell me more about like how important it is, or, maybe the specifics of what that community engagement looks like, why is it so important to engage these specific communities that are living here in America? They want to, from other places, we want to feature everyone here because we're a melting pot type culture. So, like how important is that input?
Yeah, it's critical. It's vital. We are in a moment again where, the human story is a constantly evolving story. When you are looking at, Hebrew manuscripts, for example, or if you're looking at Islamic manuscripts, Ethiopic manuscripts, some of this material is it's dating back to the 16th century and prior. We have materials of, religious value and significance that are represented in our incunabula, that are represented on tablets. When you start to think about how long the human story has been in development, and also how quickly it is evolving as a result of, just the changing nature of our societies, technology being but one motivating force. It is imperative that we can begin to see our sense of connectedness. It is imperative that we begin to appreciate that even in this very moment, although there may be so much that distinguishes us from one another, the languages we speak, the color of our skin, the colors of our skin, our hair textures, our religious identities. I mean, there's so much that could serve as a distancing, sort of way of moving through the world. We are in the African and Middle Eastern division recognizing that there is, to play on a cliche here, far more that unites us than that divides us. So this is why it's important. We're also, it's not lost on me. We're also in a moment where, there is increasing societal discord. It's not unique to the United States. It's around the global community. And it's also not lost on us in the division that some of the most egregious activities in the course of humanity have also been conducted alongside a sort of religious imperative, or the interpretation of a religious imperative. Religion, in so many ways, helps to shape and inform the human experience in ways that is deserving of deeper and more critical analysis and understanding.
And then how else does the Library of Congress recognize Islamic history?
Oh my goodness. In fact, our largest collection in the African and Middle Eastern division is our collection attributed to broadly the Arab world, which isn't always immediately the same as the Islamic world. There are distinctions there, but Islamic materials comprise the vast majority of our Near East materials in the African and Middle Eastern division. We are constantly acquiring new materials, providing reference services to researchers who are coming up with their own original ideas about Islamic history and culture. We are mounting exhibitions small-scale exhibitions of our materials, so that individuals who are in our reading room can engage with our interpretations of the collections. We are in ready conversation and dialogue through conferences, lectures, and symposia in the field, in scholarly associations and in community meetings. We are in the process of constantly acquiring material, but also constantly acquiring knowledge about Islamic art, history, and culture. Partly from the books, but also from the lived experiences. It is a dynamic process of engagement and understanding that enables us to feel compelled to share, but also compelled to receive.
Right. And so can you talk a little bit about what these materials are? What do they specifically say or look like?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I can tell you from the onset, one of the items in our collection, one of the collections in our broad collection. We have more than 1 million items in the African and Middle Eastern division, and more than 170 million throughout the library. But we have an extraordinary collection of Qurans in different languages. We have an extraordinary collection that is near and dear to my heart, which is the Omar Ibn Said collection, which is something of a focus of the funds that we received from the Lilly Endowment in terms of programmatic output. Omar Ibn Said was this remarkable individual who was born in Senegal, West Africa, in the Futa Toro region. And he was taken and put into slavery, made it through the Middle Passage, and landed in South Carolina in 1807, where he was sold at auction into slavery in the United States. And he initially was at the hand of a slave master who was very cruel and unkind, and he escaped from that individual to arrive in North Carolina, where he was discovered in in the equivalent of a church, in a church, and he was then imprisoned. And while in prison, he wrote on the prison walls in Arabic, which made him a remarkable figure at the time, a remarkable figure of curiosity, because you have to keep in mind, we're talking about the antebellum America, we're talking about the South. Islamic identity is not prevalent at this particular moment in history. And so Omar Ibn Said becomes sort of absconded at one point as this Arabian prince, as this extraordinary scholar, and the news articles at the time really sort of demonstrate American understanding and American misunderstanding about Islamic culture, heritage, history, identity. And so Omar Ibn Said becomes this sort of figure in my frame of thinking that forces America to wrestle with its long engagement with Islam from the onset of its founding as a nation through its development through to today. I mean, there is still this this tension that has to be negotiated in American society as it relates to many cultures and many histories that have been overlooked. And so, Omar ibn Said in our collection has produced what is known as the only extant autobiography written by an enslaved African person in Arabic. And he opens this autobiography with a surah from the Quran. He is very clearly establishing his identity as a Muslim man in America at a pivotal point in its history. I've singled him out as one, or his collection in our library, as one really, really interesting collection, because again, it challenges us to wrestle with the American story as we know it, with what's included in that story, with what's omitted from that story, at the same time as it challenges us to recognize Islam as a powerful global religion with reach and impact and significance in every facet of our lives, including here in America.
Yes, that's a very good point. And you saying that or makes me think of I don't know how much you would, I mean, you probably might know a lot about this, but just, Omar's story, but then also looking at the entire, like slave trade, thinking about a lot of those slaves most likely would have been Muslim, maybe. So again, like you were saying, Islam has been in America for a lot longer than we think, right? We've had that in our society for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. It's a good point.
I think it's, if I may, just share that, when we think about somebody like Omar ibn Said, and we're thinking about Islam in this context. I mean, there are multiple points of engagement, encounter, and transaction here. I mean, here is a man in West Africa who is, of a society that would have had its own indigenous practice.
Yeah.
And throughout the course of history, there is this sort of Islamic presence pouring into West Africa and really having a powerful impact on African society, and expanding it to include embrace of Islamic tradition. So there's the influx of Islam into Africa, and then by turn, through the transatlantic slave trade and other means, the influx of Islamic practice in the United States. So when we start thinking about global history and what connects us, the idea of sort of keeping Islam in a box, sort of cordoned off in the Middle East and sort of stopping there, and in Medina or in Mecca, we're sort of missing the point, which is that alongside so many of our other monotheistic faiths, that this is a way of life that has impacted global humanity in dynamic ways that we ought to have a chance to further explore. And the Lilly Endowment opportunity allows for that.
Thank you for joining us this week. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at American Muslim Today. If you'd like to read more about this story and access more digital content, feel free to check out our website, AmericanMuslimToday.com. We'll see you next week on The Muslim Viewpoint.